Hello, I'm wannabe indie filmmaker Sam McKinstry. Nice to meet you, see you, hello. And I'm here with a video sort of responding to another video that a guy made about how he's not going to watch a video, which isn't a video, it's actually a film called Ghostbusters. The man's name in question is James Rolfe, the angry video game nerd, and he is pretty fantastic in most of what he does. His videos are great, I've watched lots and lots of them, and I'm a big fan of him. Very, very creative man. But he's made a little stir, really, sort of, in that his approach to reviewing, or not reviewing, the new Ghostbusters film. I'll let the man himself explain.
Judging from the trailers, it looks awful. So instead of doing what everybody else is going to do, go see the movie and then talk about how bad it is, I'm going to do something different, something unheard of. I'm not going to see it. Wow. What a novel concept, right? If you already know you're going to hate it, why give them your money?
No, that's fine. That's actually really good. Don't give money or spend money on things that you just don't think are going to be worth your time. That's how, in theory, we end up with better things that are worth our time. I know he was being a little sarcastic when he said a novel concept, but it's not a novel concept. It's how the world should work. And he's totally right. He's absolutely right. And he doesn't like the look of the new Ghostbusters, and he's not going to watch it, and he's not going to bother reviewing it because he's self-employed, so he doesn't rely on someone telling him what to watch and what not to watch, so he can make that decision, and that's great. That is really good. The problem is he didn't stop there. He went on to try and explain why he felt this way, and in doing so he ended up with something that was a bit sensationalist and a bit awkward and a little uncomfortable in places, and some places he made some valid points, and I'll address those too. So I'm going to start in my sort of deconstruction of this argument and where I think he sort of maybe went wrong in his explanation, even though he's right in his end point, with a bit he said actually before the video I showed you, but because of the magic of editing, I can go back and do that. I can go back in time and show you a bit before the previous bit. That's good, isn't it? Here we go.
I'll tell you why. The original, which we now have to call the 1984 Ghostbusters, is a timeless classic.
And that's just wrong. The original is always the original. By definition, the first thing is the original, and it doesn't matter how many more you make, it's still the original. RoboCop didn't stop being the original because a new RoboCop called RoboCop was made, and you don't have to call it anything else. You don't have to call a film by the year it's released, you just call it the original, and pretty much everyone will know what you're talking about, or you'll have enough evidence that if they say, well, that's not the original, you can show it them and say it is. But he's probably being a little sarcastic here, and that would be fine, but the language is a little bit too serious and scary for this kind of thing, because this is just a film. We're only talking about a film that he doesn't want to review, and that's great. But use of the phrases like, which we now have to, which I'm going to touch more on this later. I'm going to go into more detail on this kind of language and why I think that's really the misstep that perhaps he made here. But saying things like, we have to, and the idea that this film can force itself on you or make you do things is a little bit scary language and a little bit extreme. Very extreme, in fact, not just a little bit. That's very extreme. And it's that kind of misstep that really doesn't add to the debate, it doesn't add to the discussion, and it creates a vibe, and this vibe is the thing. But I'm going to leave that there for now. I'll touch more on it later, and we'll just continue into his next point, shall we?
To me, personally, it officially ended with the death of Harold Ramis. They had all that time, and now a new Ghostbusters movie finally gets made, as if now it's appropriate? Well, at least he didn't live to see this shit.
That's really fucking dark. Now, he might be trying to be funny, and that's fine. It wasn't, I don't think, that funny. But now we're creating something else. You remember I talked about the serious language? You probably do, because it was like probably a minute ago to you. Talking about someone being better off dead than watching something is very dark, and again, kind of way too serious. The idea that Harold Ramis might rather or be better off dead than living in a world where a new Ghostbusters film lives is pretty awful. That's pretty bad phrasing. I'm pretty sure Harold Ramis was the type of guy who enjoyed life, and I'm sure his loved ones would want him around, and and saying at least he's dead so he doesn't have to see this shit. Now, I get that that might be his angry video game nerd character who does say things like that, but he's not in costume, and he isn't presenting himself as the angry video game nerd, and it's now about a video game. So really, in this attempt to what he seems to be is to genuinely and sincerely be trying to justify why he's not reviewing a film, which he doesn't have to review and he doesn't have to do any of the justification. He's turning it again into kind of dark and more serious areas. Now we have a film that not only makes you change what you call a different film, but it also is better to be dead for some people than to watch. And that's really messy. And also, he's kind of ignoring the fact that Harold Ramis did already see a really bad Ghostbusters film. He was in it. It's Ghostbusters 2. And it was shit. Very, very shit.
I, Vigo, the scourge of Carpathia, the sorrow of Moldavia, command you.
Oh, command me, Lord.
The ghost effects are on par with the live-action Scooby-Doo or Disney's Haunted Mansion, you know, the one with Eddie Murphy. It looks embarrassing when you compare it to the original that was made 30 years ago, and that still holds up. The effects in that movie are still amazing after all this time.
Actually, that's fine. That's fine. His argument's perfectly valid. The special effects don't actually look that great. That's fine. It's fine. Guys, it's fine. It's fine. We don't have to worry about this bit. Move to the next one.
Calling it Ghostbusters, but without having any connection to the original story or characters, is a shameless attempt to bank on the name to get fans to see it based on the title alone. At the same time, it takes advantage of the younger generations who might not have even seen the original. They'll see it without feeling like there's any prerequisite of having to see the other movies.
So here I'm a little confused. He seems to be James Rolfe, Mr. Rolfe, seems to be sort of suggesting that perhaps you should have to watch the other Ghostbusters films in order to watch this one, as if you were young, so young that you didn't grow up with the original Ghostbusters and you watched the new one first, you are not doing it right or properly, which is fan argument and not really a justification for why he's not watching the film. He's already done that when he says, I just don't want to watch the film. But also, that's kind of forcing people to watch Ghostbusters 2, which, as I mentioned, and I'll have to show again, is pretty shit.
Oh, command me, Lord.
But away from Ghostbusters 2, I'm sorry, I'm not going to show any more clips from that. Kind of the idea that you have to watch other films in order to watch a film is bad business unless you're Marvel. And then I guess they kind of get away with it.
And now, whenever you look up the original movie, you're always going to see Ghostbusters 1984 and Ghostbusters 2016. It's piggybacking on the name. And maybe that's not the intention, but call it Ghostbusters The Next Generation or Ghostbusters Re-Energized. Anything stupid like that would have been better.
Okay, now there's two elements to this kind of thing, and the first one I'll say is Mr. Rolfe is clearly a huge fan of Ghostbusters, and that's wonderful. I love people who can be fans of any kind of film franchise, but he seems to be taking the idea that a bad installment in the franchise exists, which he already does with Ghostbusters 2, I'm not showing another clip, don't worry, and taking it as a very personal kind of slightly insult or getting a bit serious about it. And I'd say it's okay if a bad installment later on exists. It doesn't ruin your enjoyment of the first film, and you shouldn't let it affect you in any way. I live in a world where the bad Terminator films outnumber the good, and I'm a huge Terminator fan. But that's fine, I can live with that, and I'm sure he'll find a way to move forward. But here's that language again, that have to. He sort of says we now have to call it the 1984 film and the 2016 film. And it's that scary language again, that sensationalism of this film, this kind of new Ghostbusters film forcing us to change the very way that we can behave. It's that kind of language, which is the really unhelpful bit that I think he really got wrong. Again, I'm going to come to most of why later, so for now we'll leave this bit here and go into the next clip.
You know what everybody's been calling it? The female Ghostbusters. I hear that all the time, the female Ghostbusters. Does that mean we have to call the old one the male Ghostbusters? It doesn't matter.
Okay, so he sort of said it didn't matter, and he's kind of right that it doesn't matter, except he talked all that way before, so it does matter. Now, calling the film, some people might call it the female Ghostbusters. That doesn't mean you have to call it the female Ghostbusters just because other people are doing it. Other people vote for UKIP, but I probably won't ever do that. But the idea again is coming in that we have to. Do we have to call it the original, the male Ghostbusters? Well, no, if you didn't before, I'm not sure that you have to do that either. In fact, I'm pretty certain that you don't. And that's kind of fine. But here we go again with this kind of subversive have to, and this film making us do something we don't want to. And subversive messaging, it's not great, is it? It's not a great thing. And we're getting closer to the point, but I'm still going to wait to the end to really go into why all this kind of slightly scary, seedy kind of idea of this film being a threat and forcing us to do something is bad. But I'm not there yet, so we'll go to the next clip.
But I can't blame everybody for identifying it that way, because there's no other way to identify the movies. There's no other name for it. It's just Ghostbusters.
New Ghostbusters. Kristen Wiig's Ghostbusters. Brand spanking new golden shiny Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters the new class.
Ghostbusters the new class.
And I know the term remake has gone out of fashion, but I feel like it is a remake, because now everybody says reboot, but I don't care. To me, by definition, a remake is when you make a movie called Ghostbusters, then you make another movie called Ghostbusters, you made another Ghostbusters, you remade it. It's a remake.
What?
And I know the term remake has gone out of fashion, but I feel like it is a remake.
Yeah, a remake is a remake. Like Psycho, which was completely shot for shot remade. They remade the entire film, did it again, but with Vince Vaughn. Don't know why. And a reboot is when you completely restart and pretend that nothing happened before, like RoboCop, which did just that, and quite boringly. This isn't like a bad point. This isn't like this isn't the bit that I think is badly done. It's just a bit strange and weird, and saying I feel and therefore this is pretty bad debate. It'd be a bit like if I said, well, I feel the world is flat and therefore by definition the world is flat. What? People actually do that. Oh.
But by using the name, it's pretending to be original in its own right and sweeping the first one under the rug as if it didn't happen.
It's not very good, but I'm just going to show you a little bit of the trailer.
That's why we need a new term, and I call it a name make. It's a name make.
That's sort of okay, actually, that's fine. Making up your own kind of word to define something, if you can coherently define it, is great. I mean, you might as well just call it a sequel or a reboot, because it's one or the other. But name make is alright, that sounds quite nice, actually. Name make, I quite like saying that. Name make. I am just going to show you a clip from earlier that I didn't use before, time travel and all that editing. I don't have to show this in chronological order.
I know I'm biased. Ghostbusters is something that a lot of us grew up with.
Yeah, that's fine. And actually pretty good. Admitting you're a bit biased is fine. And you're allowed to be biased. James Rolfe is fully allowed to be biased. And he's a big fan of the original Ghostbusters, and that makes him more biased towards his judgment of a new Ghostbusters film. That's great, that's fine, and it's good that he's admitted that. Nothing wrong in that bit. But then you get this bit.
Now wait, I don't want to sound too biased here.
Yeah, bias is something you are or you aren't, and if you admit to it, then you are biased. You can't be too biased, or slightly biased, or under biased. You're biased or you're not, and he's already kind of admitted he is. I'm just being a dick, really. That doesn't really affect the argument, and none of that means he shouldn't review the new Ghostbusters, but I'm not saying he should review the new Ghostbusters. I just think he did this a bit badly. Here, after this, I'm going to skip a little bit, but I'm going to acknowledge it. He did mention about Star Trek, and he talked about how he'd like a reboot or a remake or whatever it is to work well. Name make. And he made some fine, coherent points. And then he talked about Star Wars, which I am going to show you a little bit of.
Or how about Star Wars? It's a sequel, but it's also a reboot. It reboots the franchise by introducing new characters and starting a new adventure, but it doesn't forget about the old characters.
Yeah, so this is actually kind of fine. I mean, I would say that Star Wars is more a sequel and a continuation of everything rather than how you do a reboot or any of that stuff. But I'm just debating, and And the reason I can debate is because I'm not just going around saying, I have to call it this now because this film's out there. And that's the way to a good debate. It's not saying that you're forced to do something, but actually sort of engaging on it. But this is actually not really a point that's relevant. So I'm sorry that this is in the video because it's not a reason why he should watch the new Ghostbusters film. There is no reason he should watch the new Ghostbusters film, and it's not really an example of what he did badly. So I'm just going to move along and pretend this didn't happen. You should probably do that too. I did have some clips about him talking about what he would like from a Ghostbusters reboot, but I'm not going to bother with that either. It's a bit convoluted and a bit long, but it's fine because it's what he would want from a Ghostbusters reboot, and that's great. He's a fan of Ghostbusters, and that's his parameters and how we do it, and that's absolutely fine. So instead, I'm going to leave him with what he's going to do next.
Well, check in next time, and I'll fully illustrate this disaster by examining the history of Ghostbusters 3 and see how it ended up at this spot where it is.
Yeah, that will be a good video. I can already tell you that will be a great video, and I'll almost certainly be watching it because, as I mentioned before, Mr. Rolfe, the Angry Video Game Nerd, makes really, really good videos, well researched, well done, much better than the shit that I do, or we do, or you do. But now I'm reaching that point of that bit that makes me really uncomfortable about how James Rolfe presented his argument, and it's kind of subtle and subversive, and it's not necessarily him. But to begin with, I have to show some tweets. Now, these tweets aren't anything to do with Mr. Rolfe. They're not linked to him. They're not his words at all. But they'll help me explain my point, so I apologise. But here now, read by two very, very handsome men, are some tweets that have gone out in response to the new Ghostbusters trailer and the fact the film exists in the first place.
Feminists just fucked my childhood. Going to ignore every movie with these actresses since now. Thanks, Sony!
This is pandering to SJWs and feminists not giving any of my money to this crap. Psh, female scientists, yeah, right.
Well, looks like SJWs and feminists got exactly what they wanted. A mediocre gender swap. Good job, guys. Female Ghostbusters? I wish these feminists would just bust their backs with unpaid domestic labour for centuries instead.
You sure this isn't a fetish movie? These ugly chicks are taking a lot of gigantic loads to the face, and their bondage-style costumes, their strap-ons, the lesbian tension between them. I can't wait to see this in a dark theatre. It will be such fun seeing feminazis mocked at. They won't even understand how submissive this perverted film has made them. Thanks, Sony.
Ghost tampons and retaining phantom water? Attack of the Cellular Ghoul! One marries Slimer and nags him about helping around the house. Plot twist, Melissa McCarthy is actually the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's Dingleberry. Erin Andrews makes a cameo as a big-nosed zombie crying about some video. Hillary Clinton is the main villain as a spectre called the Boner Killer. Another plot twist, Chris Christie is actually Slimer.
This horrible trailer just proves that women are too dumb and unfunny to compete against men. Manhood101.com. The truth hurts. Now, that shit's horrible. That's messy, ugly shit. It's not really a good deconstruction of why this film or trailer is good or worth watching or not. It's just kind of nasty and horrible, and let's call it what it is. It's kind of really sexist and misogynistic in places, and that's really, really ugly. Now, Mr. Rolfe isn't that guy. He didn't do any of that tweeting-wise, but there's this vibe around the film, this vibe that's making actually debating or discussing it really, really difficult, because if you don't like it, you get lumbered in with all that stuff, and if you do like it, you get attacked by the people who do that stuff, and the vibe around this film is ugly. Now, is it because there's a female cast? I don't know. I don't really care. It probably is. It might not be. I'm not going to look into all that in this video. But what I think Mr. Rolfe really misstepped is he fed into this vibe. Not the sexist element, but the seriousness of it. This film being like a threat and being something that sort of strong language can be used for. And when he talks about this film forcing us to have to call the original something else, or we have to call it the 1984 film now, or he goes and discusses how someone like Howard Ramis would be better off dead than watching it, facetiously or not, in a video where he's feeding into this debate and discussing it. It isn't helpful and it's kind of really ugly, and it doesn't help his point at all because it lumbers him in with some of the more intense language that other people have used. Now, he isn't sexist. He's a really cool guy from what I can tell, but he misstepped here, I feel, and that's part of, I think, some of the reaction to what his video got. Now, a lot of people are really supportive of his video, and that's great. I think, again, his ultimate point, I don't have to watch something I don't want to, and I'm not going to give money to something I don't think I'm going to enjoy, is awesome. We should all do that, and then maybe someone like Electronic Arts would care more about making games that work on launch. But in making that point, he then decided to go into this whole thing about the film, and that use of the language and everything kind of feeds into all that, and some people will take things he said and try and make what they've then said, which is probably pretty heinous, sound more reasonable, and say, like, look, he's backing me and we're all in this together, and we're not. And it's this kind of approach that's, again, shutting down the debate that I wish I could have. Am I going to watch the film? No. Cinema's really fucking expensive and I'm tight, and I don't really care about Ghostbusters. I was born after the first one came out, and I think the second one's shit. I don't think it's that good. I think it's fine, but I don't think it's the classic everyone says. But then I love Mortal Kombat Conquest, so I don't have good taste. But anyway, that's my video. James Rolfe, great guy. Right idea, wrong argument. I'm done. Bye! Is that alright? You're looking at me like...
It's fine.
Are you just... This isn't going... Okay.
It might go in the video.
It might go in the video.
I want
This
it
will
to
be
go in
like,
the
this is your post-credit scene,
Yeah.
is it? Alright.
Why else would I have to keep rolling? To get over the point.
I don't know why you keep rolling.
No. This is the sort of thing we leave at the end of videos.
It is.
Yeah.
That's why I never talk about my heroin addiction until the camera's off.
Yeah. So,
I do really like his
just turning the
videos.
camera off?
Yeah, just I can see it's off.
Yeah, it's off.
I can
Yeah,
see
it's
that that is
so
off.
How's your heroin addiction? How's it going?
It's manageable.
Ah.
High functioning.
Cool.
It's great.
Bye!